Tonight's tale drifts beyond sleep, into a place where your body still lies, but something else has taken your name. Hello everyone. Welcome to You Dreamt This. Tonight, I'll guide you through a strange, hypnotic tale, one meant to lull you into another place, somewhere familiar, but wrong in ways your waking mind may not catch. Before we begin, take a moment to breathe. Unclench your jaw. Let your shoulders melt. There's nothing you need to do now but listen. Now, let's drift into the story. I first noticed the room when I was 8. It wasn't in my house, or even in my town. It was in my dreams, a recurring gray door down a narrow hallway, its brass handle too high for me to reach. I remember waking up each time just as I tried to stretch tall enough to grab it, always failing, always frustrated. I told my parents. They said it was just a dream. But something about it felt patient. Like the door was waiting. Years passed. The dream would come back every so often, always the same. The hallway never changed, smooth, windowless gray walls, a single flickering ceiling bulb, and that heavy, waiting door at the end. Each time, I got closer to reaching the handle. I forgot about it sometime around high school. Life moved on. I was working 2 jobs by 25, dating casually, nothing serious. Everything was ordinary, pleasantly boring. The dream had vanished for years, until it came back on a Tuesday in April. But now I was tall enough. The handle was cold. Heavier than it should have been. When I opened it, I expected the dream to fall apart like most dreams do, replaced by some nonsense logic or cartoonish transformation. But it didn't. The door creaked inward like a real door. It opened into a dim room with red carpet and dusty green wallpaper, patterned with faded vines. The room smelled old. Like it had been sealed for a long, long time. There was no furniture. Just a table. On the table, a tape recorder. I stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind me. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding, my sheets soaked in sweat. It was just a dream. Of course. But the feeling didn't leave. That thick, dusty air clung to my skin all day. And worse, the smell. Somehow, it followed me. Over the next few nights, I returned. Each dream began at the door. Each time, I entered the room again. It was always exactly as I left it. The table. The tape recorder. Nothing else. I never pressed play. Until the 6th dream. That night, something felt different. The room was colder. The air pressed against my ears like I was deep underwater. The walls looked closer, like they were leaning in. The bulb above flickered rapidly, and dimmed. I had no choice. I pressed play. The tape hissed. Then, a voice. My voice. If you're hearing this, it means you made it. That's good. That's bad. I'm not sure yet. I don't have long. Time here doesn't run the way it does out there. But the room knows you now. And you're going to start seeing things. They'll look wrong, like memories that weren't yours, or objects from the wrong house. Don't trust them. Especially not the girl with no mouth. If you see her, run. You'll want to come back here again. You won't have a choice, not really. But remember this room isn't a dream. It's a waiting room. And something else is waking up. Click. The tape ended. When I woke, I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. I'd had it once before, back in college. But this time was different. I was frozen, eyes wide, the smell of that dusty room thick in my nose. And I wasn't alone. Something stood at the corner of my bedroom. It looked like a woman, but only barely. She was tall, too tall. Her arms were wrong. Too long. Too thin. Her skin sagged like wet paper, and her head twitched at random, like a glitch in a corrupted video. And her face, she had no mouth. Just smooth, stretched skin where one should be. Just like the voice warned. She leaned toward me. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Not even breath. Then, she turned away. Stepped backward into the dark corner until the shadow swallowed her. When I finally moved again, I vomited. I didn't sleep the next night. Or the next. But by the fourth day, I couldn't stay awake. And sure enough, when I finally dozed off, I was back in the hallway. The door stood open. The room was different now. The table was gone. The recorder, gone. In their place, a window. It shouldn't have been possible, the room had no outside wall. But the window was there, and through it, I saw something I can barely describe. A field of rusted swings. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. All gently swaying. No wind. Beneath them, faces. Not children. Not people. Just faces, barely breaking the soil. Eyes closed. Mouths open. Like they were dreaming, too. And above it all, the sky turned black and red like oil and fire. Then, I saw her. The girl. She was standing in the field, facing the window. Me. She lifted her hand and pointed. Straight at me. Then the glass cracked. Just once, a thin hairline fracture. I woke up bleeding from my nose. My ears rang for an hour. I tried to tell someone, a therapist, then a friend. But no one believed me. Not really. It didn't help that I looked like hell, eye bags, trembling hands, weight loss. I stopped going to work. Couldn't focus. Couldn't stay grounded. The world around me started slipping, minor things at first. I'd reach for my phone and pull out a walkie-talkie. Turn on the TV and see static with words underneath, "You left the door open." People I passed in the street had faces that shifted when I blinked. My mother called me, but the voice on the phone was mine. "I'm waiting," it said. It's been weeks now. Or months. I don't know anymore. I see her more often. The girl with no mouth. Sometimes in reflections. Sometimes in crowds. Sometimes outside my bedroom window, even though I live on the third floor. And the worst part? Last night, the tape recorder was back. But it wasn't on the table. It was on my desk. In the real world. And it had a new tape inside. A fresh one. Labeled, Play ME. I haven't pressed it yet. But I will. You already know I will. Because I dreamt this. And so did you. And next time, we won't wake up so easily. The tape sat on my desk like it had always been there. Except I knew it hadn't. I'd cleared the surface the night before, wiped every inch, too wired to sleep but too exhausted to do anything else. But now, there it was. A tape recorder I hadn't seen in the real world since I was a kid. Same dull plastic. Same red record button chipped at the corner. And inside it, that fresh black cassette. Play Me, written in my handwriting. But not quite. The M was crooked, and the loop in the Y stretched too far down, like whoever wrote it was mimicking me from memory. I stared at it for what felt like hours. I didn't want to play it. But I couldn't leave it alone either. Every time I walked away, I felt it tugging at my thoughts, pulling at the edge of my focus like an itch I couldn't scratch. By midnight, I gave in. I pressed play. The tape hissed, like before. But this time, there was no voice. No message. Just sound. A soft hum. Then static. Then a slow, rhythmic knocking. Like something tapping from inside a hollow wall. 4 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. 4 knocks again. And just as I leaned in to listen closer, someone knocked on my apartment door. 4 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. For more. Exactly like the tape. I froze. Didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, my phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number, open it. I didn't. I sat there in the dark, heart racing, phone still buzzing every few seconds with new messages. I didn't read them. I couldn't. I just watched the red light on the tape recorder blink with every knock. Finally, silence. No more knocking. No more messages. Just a soft click as the tape stopped. And then, I woke up. Except I hadn't gone to sleep. I was in the hallway again. The one from the dreams. Only now, it was different. The floor was carpeted in that same red from the room, but the carpet rippled beneath my feet like liquid. The walls pulsed slightly, breathing in and out like lungs. The bulb overhead buzzed, not from electricity, but like a swarm of flies trapped inside it. The door was gone. Instead, the hallway stretched infinitely in both directions, each side disappearing into darkness. Then, a voice. Faint. From behind me. Not spoken, whispered directly into my mind. He played the tape. That means we can follow him now. I turned. No one there. But the hallway behind me was filling with shadows. Slowly, like fog slithering under a door. I ran. No plan. Just away. The hallway bent, spiraled, twisted, inverted, the laws of space folded in on themselves like a dream collapsing in slow motion. I kept running. Then, ahead, a door. Smaller than the one before. Painted black. No handle. On it, scrawled in something too dark to be ink, "You shouldn't have listened." I didn't stop. I slammed into the door shoulder first, it gave way instantly, no resistance, and I fell into something impossibly vast. It was the field again. The one from the window. The rusted swings. The faces in the soil. But now, they were moving. Not just swaying. Twitching. Eyes fluttering. Mouths mumbling things I couldn't hear. And overhead, the sky wasn't sky anymore. It was the ceiling of my childhood bedroom. I recognized the glow-in-the-dark stars I used to stick there. But they were bleeding. Thin red trails dripping from each one, pooling in the soil around the faces. Then, behind me, footsteps. Deliberate. Wet. I turned slowly. It was her. The girl with no mouth. Except now, she had one. It was too wide. Too sharp. It stretched from ear to ear, like someone had drawn it with a box cutter. Inside, not teeth. Not really. Just rows and rows of static. She didn't speak. She broadcasted. The air around her shimmered like heat off pavement, and in my mind, I heard 100 voices at once. All versions of mine. He played the tape. He opened the door. He shouldn't have listened. Now we can begin. Her mouth opened wider. And the world inverted. I woke up in my bed again, but not really. Everything was off by a few inches. My bed faced the wrong direction. My posters were in languages I couldn't recognize. The windows looked out on a sky that blinked like eyes. I wasn't in my world anymore. And the tape recorder. Still there. Only now, it had a new tape. I didn't touch it this time. I left it alone. But it didn't matter. That night, it played itself. I watched from across the room, too afraid to move, as the buttons clicked and the tape began to spin. No sound. Just silence. Then, a light. Red. Flashing from inside the recorder. It pulsed in rhythm, like Morse code. I didn't understand it. Not then. But I wrote it down. Later, I translated it. She is inside your eyes. And now, every time I blink, I see her standing closer. I stopped blinking for almost a full minute. My eyes burned, vision swam. But I held them open, terrified of what might happen if I didn't. Because every time I blinked, she got closer. The girl with the slit mouth and the static smile. She didn't walk. She didn't lurch. She simply shifted, appearing 2 steps nearer each time I closed my eyes. At first, she was at the end of the hall. Then, just past the door. Now, she was inches from my bed. I couldn't live like this. I taped my eyelids open that night. Used gauze and medical tape from the bathroom drawer. Sat in a chair facing the door, a knife in my lap. I was shaking the whole time, but I didn't care. The tape recorder sat silent on the desk. But just before dawn, it clicked. No button pressed. No hand near it. A new tape had been inserted. I hadn't moved. Its label was blank, just a single eye drawn in shaky ink. And when it played, the sound wasn't static anymore. It was breathing. My breathing. But wrong. Too deep. Too fast. Like it came from lungs far larger than mine. Then, a whisper. Not in my head this time. From behind me. Stop resisting. You're already in the dream. I spun around, nothing. But the moment I blinked, she was there. At my feet. Looking up. Grinning with that too wide, serrated smile. And for the first time, she spoke. No longer broadcasting, no longer echoing. Her voice was soft. Almost curious. Do you remember what you traded away? I couldn't answer. I didn't know. She reached up, slowly, and touched the space between my eyes. Her fingertip was cold, impossibly cold. And then, I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was in a room. A new room. Dark green walls. No windows. One bulb swinging slowly above. The table was back. And on it, not a tape recorder. Not this time. A mirror. I stepped closer, afraid of what I'd see. My face stared back, but it wasn't mine. It used to be. But the eyes weren't mine. They were gray and glassy, like they'd been replaced with camera lenses. As I leaned in, they blinked. The mirror eyes blinked independently of me. Then, the reflection smiled. I didn't. It reached up and tapped the glass once. And the sound echoed like a thunderclap in my skull. We've been watching for so long, it said. The lips didn't move. The sound vibrated from the glass itself. Like it was speaking from behind the mirror. This is what happens when you open doors meant to stay shut. The image faded. The mirror went black. And the table split in two, clean down the center, revealing a staircase beneath. Carved into the wood around it, you remember now. I descended. Each step hummed under my feet, vibrating like bones struck by tuning forks. The deeper I went, the harder it was to breathe. Like the air thickened with memory. I smelled chalk. Old paper. Burnt plastic. And then I was in another room. This one I did remember. Vaguely. A preschool classroom. Miniature chairs. Colored rugs. Construction paper crafts tacked to the walls. But everything was faded, muted and wrong. The pictures on the walls weren't drawings. They were photographs. Still images of me sleeping. Dozens of them. Some recent, last week, maybe. Some older. Some impossibly old. Me as a child. As a teenager. Always asleep. And in every photo, in the background, she was there. The girl. Watching. Closer in each one. On the whiteboard, written in thick red marker, sleep is the gateway. You opened it. Now you must walk through. The lights buzzed overhead. I turned, and the classroom was gone. Now I stood in a hallway made of stone and bone. The walls pulsed. The floor was soft, like walking on muscle. Far ahead, a door. Different from before. White. Smooth. No handle. But on it, in fine gold lettering, "Wake up." I ran. As I reached the door, I placed my hand against it. It felt cold and wet, like touching ice submerged in blood. But I pushed. And the moment I did, I woke up. Back in my bed. Apartment normal. Almost. The mirror was gone. So was the recorder. But carved into the wall above my bed, as if burned into the drywall, "They can hear your thoughts now." And the worst part? I wasn't thinking anything. Something else was. A low murmur in my head. Like a crowd behind a locked door. Not words. Not yet. Just presence. And every time I blink, they get louder. Every time I sleep, I slip deeper. And tonight, I heard them clearly for the first time. The girl. The voices. The ones behind the glass. They whispered. "You've passed the test. Next comes the replacement." That night, I did something I hadn't done since this all started. I tried to sleep, peacefully. No rituals. No recording devices. No lights left on or alarms set in 5-minute intervals. Just sleep. Like a dare. And maybe that was the mistake. Because this time I didn't wake up where I usually did. No hallway. No door. No swings. No whispers. Just black. Not the absence of light, the absence of everything. It felt like floating in ink. Like being unwritten. Then, slowly, sensation returned. A pressure on my chest. A cold breeze across my cheeks. The faint sound of breathing, but not mine. When my vision returned, it was like pulling a curtain aside. I was in a hospital room. Or something that resembled one. Flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Peeling blue paint. Wires trailing from machines to a bed where someone lay motionless under the sheets. I walked closer. The body in the bed. It was me. Same scars. Same chipped front tooth. Same tiny freckle under the jaw. I leaned in, heart racing, expecting the figure to breathe, or twitch, or open its eyes. But it didn't. Because I wasn't in the body anymore. I was just a witness. And someone else stood in the corner. The girl with the mouth. Only now, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking through me. Straight at the body. She moved slowly, methodically, toward the bed. Her limbs were too fluid, like joints didn't apply to her anymore. She placed a hand on my sleeping chest. And whispered something I couldn't hear. Then, the machines flatlined. I gasped, sat up, awake again in my own room. Or, a version of it. Things had changed. My phone was gone. My windows bricked over. The light switch no longer existed, just a smooth, uninterrupted wall where it used to be. On my desk, something new, ajar. Sealed. Inside it, a writhing shadow that occasionally formed the vague shape of an eye. Taped to the lid, a note. "You can keep your body. But you must give us something else." At first, I didn't understand. But over the next day, things began to unravel. First, my name. It wouldn't come when I tried to speak it. Not aloud. Not even in my head. Gone. When people addressed me, strangers, baristas, delivery drivers, they never said anything at all. Just, "Hey, or, can I help you?" Like the space where my name used to be had been censored. Next, my reflection. It stopped matching my movements. At first, a second delayed. Then 2. Then 5. Until one day it just stared at me, still as a photograph, while I reached out and touched the glass. It blinked. I didn't. The jar remains sealed. I don't dare open it. But I think I know what's inside, the part of me that still belongs here. A piece of identity. Of grounding. Of self. And now that it's gone, I walk through life like a borrowed copy. People avoid my eyes. My voice echoes strangely when I speak, like I'm always in a hallway. Sometimes I pass mirrors and see the girl instead of me, just for a blink. Worst of all. Last night, I saw someone else lying in my bed. Not me. They looked like me, sounded like me, but I knew. It wasn't. And when they turned their head and locked eyes with me, they smiled. A small smile. Knowing. Confident. Then, they said my name. The one I'd forgotten. Perfectly. Like they owned it now. Story 2, The Clock That Counted Backwards. It started when I found the clock. Not in a store, or at a market. No, it was in a park. A small, forgotten garden hidden behind an old library. The clock was strange. Not big, but heavy-looking, made of black iron. The face was cracked, like shattered glass frozen in place. But what caught my eye, the hands moved backwards. Not just the second hand. Not just the minute. All of them. Ticking counter to every clock I'd ever seen. I reached out and touched it. Cold. And then, the world changed. Suddenly, the park looked different. Not newer, but older. Less alive, but more present. The air smelled dusty, like pages turning in an unread book. The sky was dim, like twilight, but there was no sun, no moon. And the people around me, they walked backward. Not literally stepping backwards, but their actions reversed. They were uneating food. Unspeaking words. Unwalking paths. I blinked, and the clock was gone. I woke up in my bedroom. Except, my wristwatch was ticking backwards. The same way. And that night, I dreamed of the garden again. But the garden was different. This time, the clock was alive. Its hands stretched like long fingers, reaching out for me. I ran. But no matter how fast I moved, the clock's hands grabbed me, pulling me deeper into time flowing backwards. In the days that followed, time twisted more around me. I remembered things before they happened. Voices spoke answers before questions formed. And sometimes, I lived entire days in reverse, waking in the evening, remembering breakfast before dinner. The world blurred between past and future. I tried to ignore it, but the clock's hands were inside my dreams, wrapping around my mind like vines. And in those dreams, a voice whispered, "You're not lost in time. Time is lost in you." Tonight, if you find a clock that ticks backwards, remember this story. Because sometimes, the strangest dreams are warnings. And sometimes, time wants to go home. After the clock disappeared from the garden, it seemed like time itself followed me home. I woke each morning with fragments of memories I hadn't lived yet, memories of conversations, places, even meals I was supposed to have later in the day. It was like my mind was reading a book from the middle, missing the chapters that should come before. At first, it was subtle. I'd glance at my watch, noticing the second hand creeping backward. I'd shrug it off as a trick of my tired eyes. But soon, the backward ticking wasn't limited to watches. Clocks, phones, microwaves, every digital display warped and reversed their counting. One night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I heard it, a slow, methodical ticking from the corner of the room. I turned my head to see a small black clock glowing faintly in the dark. Its hands, impossibly long and thin, were moving against all logic, rotating backward, step by step. I reached out to touch it. The moment my fingers brushed the cold metal, everything froze. The air held still. My heartbeat stopped. Even the faint hum of the city outside vanished. And then time began to rewind. Suddenly, I was standing in my bedroom, but it wasn't my room anymore. The walls were unfamiliar, draped in wallpaper I didn't recognize. On the floor lay objects I didn't own. Dusty toys, broken picture frames with faces I couldn't place. Through a crack in the window, the sky shimmered with strange colors, deep purples bleeding into iridescent greens, like a painted aurora. I realized then that I wasn't in my world. I was in a space where moments unraveled, where past and future mingled in a fluid dance. Behind me, the ticking grew louder, faster. I spun around. There, suspended in the air, was the clock. Its cracked glass face glistened, revealing more than just hands. Inside the clock, shadows moved, shifting shapes and figures that twisted and dissolved before I could identify them. One shape solidified. A man, wearing a timekeeper's uniform, old-fashioned, like from a forgotten century. His eyes were deep wells of black, pulling me in. He spoke without moving his lips. "You've stepped out of time's line. Now, you must choose, return and forget. Or stay and become part of the turning." I tried to ask questions, but my voice was swallowed by the room. The man raised a hand, and the clock's hand spun wildly, faster and faster, until the world blurred around me. Then, as abruptly as it began, the spinning stopped. I was back in my bedroom. My watch lay on the nightstand, ticking forward. But something had changed. On the back of my hand, a faint mark glowed, a symbol of an ancient clockwork gear. And in my dreams, the clock waits. Waiting to turn again. The mark on my hand wasn't just a mark. It was a promise. A promise that time wouldn't let me go. Days blurred into nights, nights bled into days, and I couldn't tell one from the other. The gear symbol pulsed faintly under my skin, as if counting down something I didn't understand. Every clock I passed glanced at me, their hands twitching, sometimes stopping entirely. Once, a grandfather clock in a neighbor's house ticked backward while I watched from the street. The family inside didn't notice. But I felt it deep inside, like a cold wave washing through my chest. The strangest part? My memories started shifting. I remembered things that never happened. Conversations I never had. Dreams I'd forgotten before they even came true. One night, I dreamed of the timekeeper again. He wasn't in his uniform this time. Instead, he wore my face. He smiled, a smile that wasn't mine. "The gear marks you now. It binds you to the turning. You will lose hours you never had, and gain moments you never lived." He reached out, pressing a cold hand to my forehead. Suddenly, I was somewhere else. I stood in an endless field of clocks. They lay scattered across the ground, broken, ticking, some frozen forever. The sky above was impossible, a swirling mosaic of stars and shifting constellations that moved in reverse. I noticed a path, made of shattered watch pieces and glowing sand, winding toward a colossal clock tower looming on the horizon. Its face was a shattered mirror. I started walking. With each step, the ground beneath my feet ticked like a heartbeat. My pulse synced with the rhythmic sound. But the deeper I went, the more I felt myself unraveling. Memories slipped away. Names, faces, moments once dear began to fade, replaced by strange, cold emptiness. I reached the tower's base. A massive door of polished silver, locked tight with no handle. Carved above it, "Only those who have lost time may enter." I pressed my palm against the door. The gear mark flared bright. The door creaked open. Inside, the air shimmered like liquid mercury. I stepped in and saw endless rows of clocks, some counting forward, some backward, some ticking in impossible rhythms. And at the center, a pedestal holding a clock unlike any I'd ever seen. It had no hands. Instead, it had a hollow center, like an empty eye. As I approached, the clock began to pulse, slow, deep, like a breathing heart. Then the timekeeper's voice echoed around me. "This is the heart of time. It holds what you've lost, and what you have yet to find." He appeared behind me, his face a shifting mask of past and future selves. "Will you take the heart? Will you reclaim what time has stolen, or surrender to the endless turning?" I reached out to touch the heart. And the world dissolved. The moment my fingers brushed the surface of the heart, a shockwave rippled through me, a pulse of raw, ancient power that shook the very fabric of the endless clock chamber. The hollow center of the clock throbbed like a living thing, cold and vast, as if it was less an object and more a gateway to something beyond comprehension. The timekeeper stood silently behind me, his eyes swirling with kaleidoscopes of moments, past regrets, future hopes, forgotten dreams, all spinning wildly in a tempest inside his gaze. "Choose wisely," he whispered, voice like wind scraping stone. "For once you take the heart, time no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the turning." I hesitated, breath shallow. The room itself seemed to contract and expand with every pulse of the heart. The countless clocks around me slowed, then sped up, their ticking melding into a dissonant symphony that echoed inside my skull. With trembling hands, I grasped the heart's cold edge. Instantly, a cascade of memories flooded me, memories not mine, but somehow known. Faces I'd never seen, places I'd never visited, voices whispering secrets too ancient for human ears. It was as if the heart stored not just lost time, but lost lives, lost chances, lost moments stitched together in a tapestry of existence. Suddenly, I was no longer in the chamber. I was somewhere else. I was standing in a fog-shrouded city. Buildings twisted and warped, their edges bending like reflections in rippling water. Streets looped back on themselves, leading nowhere and everywhere at once. The sky was a dull gray, fractured with slivers of glowing cracks that hummed faintly. I knew, somehow, that this place was the space between moments, the forgotten corners where lost time gathered. And in the distance, I heard ticking. Slow and steady. Like a heartbeat. I turned, and there she was. A woman made of shifting shadows, her form flickering between sharp clarity and vaporous haze. Her eyes glowed softly, endless wells of time itself. "Welcome," she said, voice like falling leaves. "You hold the heart now, but do you understand what it means?" I opened my mouth to speak, but words failed me. "The heart is a prison, a beacon, and a key," she continued. "It holds your lost hours, your unwound days, but it also binds you to the turning. To the cycle. To the endless dance of time." She reached out, and in her hand appeared a small hourglass filled with black sand that never fell. Instead, the grains drifted upward, swirling endlessly. "You've crossed the line. Now the question is, will you break the cycle, or become part of it?" I took a step forward. The ground rippled beneath me like water. Time bent around us, folding layers of past and future, moments blurring until they were indistinguishable. Then the city shifted again. Now, I stood before a door carved from ancient oak, its surface etched with clockwork symbols and cryptic runes glowing faintly. Above it, a single word was inscribed: "Return." The woman gestured. "Beyond this door lies your past. The memories you lost. The hours you forgot. But be warned, to return is to surrender the heart. To forget what you've gained." I hesitated. To return meant leaving behind the power I'd just grasped. It meant forgetting the strange and terrible knowledge the heart had shown me. But to stay meant losing myself in the turning. The door creaked open. I stepped through and was flooded with sensations, sounds, smells, feelings, like waking from a long sleep. I was back in my room. The familiar clutter of books and papers, the hum of the city beyond my window. But something was wrong. I looked down at my hands. The gear mark had faded. I was free. But at a cost. Because the memories of the city, the heart, the woman, they slipped away like smoke. They became fragments. Echoes. A lingering sense of loss. I closed my eyes, and for a moment, I could feel the pulse of the heart, faint and distant, buried deep beneath my skin. And then I woke. In the real world. Or at least, I think I did. Because now, every clock I pass ticks a little slower. Every moment stretches a little longer. And sometimes, when I blink just right, I catch a glimpse of that shadow woman watching from the corner of my eye, waiting for me to slip again. The gear mark may be gone, but the turning never stops. Time is still counting backward. And so am I. I thought waking up meant escape. That returning to the ordinary world would break the spell the heart of time had woven around me. But waking was just the beginning of a new nightmare. Days passed, but they were not days as I knew them. Minutes stretched and snapped like brittle threads. Hours vanished like smoke in a draft. Moments folded in on themselves, doubling and tripling in strange patterns I couldn't predict. I was slipping through time, losing grip on when I was, where I was, who I was. Sometimes I found myself staring at my hands, counting the ticks of an old wristwatch that no longer worked. The second hand jumped erratically, sometimes moving forward, sometimes backward. Its rhythm mocked my failing sense of reality. I tried to write down the hours, the dates, the events I could grasp, but even my handwriting betrayed me, shifting on the page between languages I didn't recognize. My reflection grew more and more distorted. One evening, it smiled before I did. Another time, it blinked when my eyes remained still. And sometimes, when I glanced away and looked back, the mirror showed an empty room. One night, I dreamed again. This time not of clocks or endless cities, but of a cavern deep beneath the earth. The cavern walls pulsed with a slow, steady heartbeat, glowing faintly with veins of liquid silver. In the center was a vast pool of black water, perfectly still, like glass, but reflecting not the cavern above, but my own face. Only it wasn't my face. It was the face of the timekeeper, his eyes wide, hollow, and filled with shadows. He reached out of the water, fingers long and thin, beckoning me to join him. "Come," he whispered. "The turning never ends. But here, you may find stillness." I reached toward him, but before I could touch his hand, the water rippled violently, pulling me in. I awoke gasping, soaked with sweat, heart pounding. But the feeling stayed, that cold, heavy stillness that seemed to anchor me against the slipping tides of time. In the days that followed, I searched for that stillness. I meditated, I walked for hours in silence, I wrote letters I never sent. But the turning chased me relentlessly. Every clock in the world seemed to whisper secrets when I passed. Tick. Tock. Tick. Tock, words too faint to hear clearly, but loud enough to echo in my bones. Sometimes, I would catch fragments, lost, forgotten, becoming, turning. One night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the ticking slowed. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any sound. Then, a new voice. Soft. Sweet. Familiar. "Do you remember?" The voice was my own. Or maybe the echo of me, fractured by time. "Do you remember who you are?" I sat up, heart racing. Was I awake? Or still caught in the dream? The room was dark, but the gear mark on my hand glowed faintly. The turning had marked me forever. But that voice, that question, sparked a fire inside me. Who was I? Who had I become in the endless dance of time? Was I the one slipping through seconds, or the one trying to hold them together? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I had to find the place where time began. Where the turning started. Because only there could I hope to stop it. And so I began searching. For signs. For clues. For the meaning behind the clock's backwards ticking. Tonight, if you ever hear a clock ticking backwards, or if you catch your reflection smiling before you do, remember this story. Because sometimes, time forgets us. And sometimes, we forget time. The search consumed me. Days blurred, weeks dissolved, but I felt no passage of time, only fragments of moments scattered like leaves in a storm. I began to notice strange patterns in everything. The way shadows bent strangely at dusk. The way clocks in shops flickered, some with hands spinning erratically, others frozen like statues. The way strangers' eyes seemed to flicker with something unreadable, like they were seeing more than I could. I followed these signs, half dreaming, half awake, walking streets that twisted impossibly, like a maze built from memory and nightmare. One evening, beneath a sky painted in bruised purples and cold blues, I found it. An ancient door carved into the side of a crumbling stone wall, hidden behind thick vines that whispered with the wind. No lock, no handle. Just a smooth surface etched with spirals and symbols I'd seen before, the same clockwork gear from my hand, swirling endlessly. I reached out. The door pulsed beneath my fingertips. It opened. Inside was a cavern unlike any I'd imagined. Walls shimmered with liquid light, colors flowing like molten metal. At the center, a spiraling staircase wound downward, carved from a single block of crystal-clear quartz. Each step glowed softly beneath my feet as I descended, echoing with the sound of ticking, slow, rhythmic, and alive. Deeper and deeper I went, the air growing colder and thicker, until I reached a vast chamber. In the center sat a throne, wrought from intertwined clock gears, shining with a light that was both warm and cold. And sitting on the throne, the timekeeper. His eyes were no longer shadows, but endless stars. He smiled, a knowing, eternal smile. "You've come far," he said, voice like the turning of the earth. "Few ever find where time begins." I swallowed hard. "What is this place?" He gestured around. "This is the heart of the turning, the wellspring of all time's flow. Past, present, future, all converge here, spiraling endlessly. To stand here is to stand outside time itself." I looked down and noticed the gear mark on my hand had grown brighter, pulsing in sync with the ticking that filled the chamber. "Why am I here?" I asked. The timekeeper's smile deepened. "Because time chose you. You carry the mark, the burden, of the turning. You have slipped between seconds, seeing what no mortal should see. Now, you must decide." "Decide what?" I whispered. "Whether to become the guardian of time or to let it unravel." The chamber shifted. The walls melted into stars and void. I saw visions. Cities rising and falling. Moments frozen and shattered. Lives lived forward, backward, sideways. All entwined in the dance of time. The timekeeper's voice echoed in my mind. "Guardians hold the heart steady. They weave the strands of moments into a tapestry of existence. Without them, time frays, slips into chaos. The turning consumes all." He rose, stepping toward me. "But to guard time is to lose it. Your past will fade. Your present will blur. Your future will dissolve into endless possibility." I felt the weight of his words crushing my chest. To save time meant to sacrifice myself. To let it go meant losing everything. Then I heard the voice again. Soft. Sweet. Familiar. The voice from the Shadow Woman. "Remember who you are. Remember what you carry." I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw the endless turning spiral, endless loops folding on themselves like a fractal. I felt the pulse of the heart, strong, steady, eternal. And I knew. There was only one choice. When I opened my eyes, the timekeeper was gone. But the chamber remained. And the gear mark on my hand burned bright. I stepped forward to the throne and sat. The ticking slowed, then steadied, as the weight of ages settled on my shoulders. I was no longer the lost traveler slipping through time. I was its guardian. And the turning continued. Tonight, as you listen, remember, time is not a river. It is a spiral. Endless. Eternal. And sometimes, it needs a keeper. Thank you for joining this journey through strange dreams and twisted time. Rest now, knowing the turning never stops, but neither do we. Good night.